If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then the UK Property Market Stat Show, is for you. My name is Chris Watkin, and each week I have a special guest. This week, returning is Iain White. We'll come to Iain in a second. The UK Property Market Stat Show shows you what's happening in the property market in the UK right here, right now. We're looking at the number of properties that are coming on the market, the number of properties that are being reduced, the number of the number of sales and fall throughs. Why is that important? Well, the vast majority of indexes that are out there are measuring the property market from 3, 6, or even 9 months ago. But by us looking at the property market right here, right now, we can judge what's going to happen to those metrics by 3, 6 months time. We can judge where the property market's going to go, and therefore you can make judgments from that. Today, I'm joined by Iain White. Iain is a regular to the show, and his insight is truly fantastic. He's an ex-director from Romans, and what he doesn't know about estate agency isn't worth knowing. He's a guru, one-man guru to one-man band and one-woman estate agents, all the way up to some of the biggest regional chains out there. Iain, thanks for joining us today on week 47 of the UK Property Market Stat Show.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you for having me on again.
You always give great value, and we get great feedback from you, so it's always a pleasure to get you back, mate. So we're dealing with week 47. Just so you're aware, we didn't have a show last week because I was away, so we're looking at both weeks 46 and week 47. Week 47 is Monday the 20th of November all the way through until Sunday the 26th of November inclusive. So Iain, we'll dive in a second. For anyone who has not watched the show before, the show is in a number of sections. The first main section looks at the national stats. We'll then just briefly have a look at the regional stuff, which you'll be able to download yourself afterwards. And then finally, we end up on a town or a city, and we focus on that town's property market, going really deep dive. And this week, we're going to the town of Mansfield in Nottinghamshire, and we'll be looking at all the estate agents in there and looking at how each agent is performing, and might be of interest to the agents in the surrounding area. So Iain, let us dive in and have a look. So this week, as always, I'll just briefly go through the numbers, and then we'll get Iain to comment on this accordingly. So this week, we have put onto the market 24,269 properties. The week before, 25,000. The running 2023 average is 31,900. So you would expect that there would be a little bit of ease off on that, because we are in late November, and we go year to date, and you can see that the pink line is what listings are doing, and you can see that we are tracking very, very similar to what happened in 17, 18 or 19. Year to date, the number of listings is just under 1.5 million. The average price of a property coming on the market is 385, and as I said, 24,269, which is very, very comparable to the weeks that we've had apart from that strange year of 2020. So, Iain, thoughts on listings, mate?
I think generally speaking, apart from the obvious seasonal slowdown, I think we've been in a period where instructions have been a little easier to come by. I think properties coming to the market and the choice available to purchasers has increased. So I think that bodes well for selling inside of Christmas might be a tougher ask than usual, but I think it sets the industry fair if they can get the stock in, get it correctly marketed, get it launched, get it correctly priced. I think January, February, March are set to be pretty decent, because it is all about setting up 2024 now, isn't it? In reality, anything you sell now is going to be a 24 invoice. So it's pretty much steady as she goes. If you'd have asked me, I thought that Christmas would come earlier, and I thought that it might be quite a steep decline curve in terms of listings, etc. I thought the market would shut down a little bit early, but it doesn't actually seem to have done that really. So I think that's positive. I can only see positive signs in the numbers. So I, as an estate agent, I'd be very optimistic about the first quarter of 2024, which sounds bizarre. 2024, where did that come from? But anyway, 2024, the first quarter of 2024, I think is shaping up to be quite positive.
Interestingly, the average price of a property coming on the market has been slipping tremendously. This is the year figure, and the yellow line is the average price of a property coming onto the market, and the pink line is the average price of a property sale agreed. That doesn't mean that there is a drop, that every property drops that amount when it sells. It just means that the lower price properties have a higher propensity to sell, which means that that's going to drag the average down. The magic here is the gap between the two. And you can see here, and we noticed this back in the autumn, if you go and look at some of the other older shows, that there was an awful lot of properties that came on the market in London, and that really did not screw, but really affect the average and bump that up. But interestingly, see here, look at this drop here, Ian, in the last couple of weeks in the average price. Just to give you an idea, the average price of a property coming on the market this year has been 430, but this week 387, the week before 403, and the week before 414 and 415 and 413. So this gap is getting tighter, which means that the average price difference this week is 9%, which is lower than the national average of around 16 or 17% for the last 7 years. So that would be an interesting trend to keep an eye on. Anything else on this? Go on.
Well, I think some of the explanation in that is the cost of the real cost of borrowing has been coming down. I know the headline rate has remained stagnant or has been going up, but remained stagnant in very recent weeks and months. But the actual cost of anybody looking to do a remortgage has been lowering, and a lot of those larger properties were coming on the market because of what was going to happen when they came off their fixed rate. Now that danger is decreasing. Because the fixed rate product they can get today, I mean, we were touching 8% not that long ago. You can pick up a fixed rate mortgage now for just over 4%. So a lot of those people that were being pushed to sell the larger properties are now able to exercise a decision to wait or actually hang on in there. So I also think that estate agents have probably targeted their efforts for marketing at the lower end because they're the properties that still churn. So I think it's a structural situation. I still think we'll see a flux of properties coming on the market in that family space, that sort of middle market where the prices will creep back up in the new year, because I work with enough agents to know that they've got an awful lot of properties launching in the new year that can't be seen on these figures, and I know that those properties are largely made up of quite decent, what I would call mid-market family stock. Now, of course, my clients don't make up enough to affect the national picture, but I suspect that picture is being replicated across others. I can't see why it'd be any different. But,
Ian, talking of insight, now I'm sure this won't happen with your clients because you'll be dealing with top agents, but I'm hearing stories, an awful lot of stories of agents who are, let's be honest, the market is slowing up, and this is an ideal opportunity to go and pick the low-hanging fruit of other properties that have been on the market with other agents. Say the other agents overvalued it and they're coming to the end of their 12 or 16-week contract. So you would say that the sort of marketing techniques of getting second-hand stock you should be ramping that up. But I'm hearing a lot of agents are actually reducing their marketing to try and get other properties because they're running out of money. Is that a wise thing to do?
I think in some cases it's needs must. Wise would be the wrong choice of words for me. I mean, I think the skill of a business leader is knowing when to accelerate, when to put the brake on which avenues. The one thing that they mustn't do is take the heat away from the things that they can do free of charge, because you can hustle for free. You don't need. But if you can afford it, one of the last areas that I would be looking to cut would be my marketing budget, unless I can see no return from it. If I'm doing something, I would then consult with someone like yourself and say, okay, intrinsically it would feel wrong, and certainly in Roman's world, whenever the market struggled, we actually tended to spend more on marketing and hustle harder because we knew the competition were doing less, which meant our pound and our energy it's like a 6-pointer at the bottom of the league table. If you so you've got to get your strategy right, but clearly you can't write checks and sign contracts that you can't afford. So there is there is a balance between sensible estate agency. But if you are having to make cuts that you intrinsically know are a bad business strategy, it's probably because your fee proposition is too low as well. So the whole thing becomes a bit of a circle of, okay, well, if you can't afford to market yourself, then you're not going to win instructions. And if you don't win instructions, you can't afford to market yourself. And it's an imploding circle. But of course, marketing yourself with content and stuff that doesn't work is a waste of money. But the one thing you can do, is you can phone, you can hit the streets, you can network, you can go to events, you can be visible in your communities, pretty much free of charge. But no, I wouldn't be cutting my marketing budget unless literally I had no choice.
Thank you very much for the insight. Let's get back and let's have a look at the next set of slides. And we're looking at average, the price changes this week. We are on 15,200 this week. Last week, 17,300, the week before 19. So again, the number of price reductions is reducing, but interestingly, the average price reduction, number of price reductions is 20,100. I would expect price reductions to be reducing on the run up to Christmas. Probably owners focus on the big day. There's the number of reductions compared to other years. Should we move on to gross sales? Unless anything you want to add?
I think the rate of reductions will slightly start to recede now, more than is seasonally the norm. Partly because reducing it right this moment in time might not be the best strategy for the owner. In all honesty, it might be a sort of take it off, give it a fresh start in the new year with new price, new photography, possibly new agent. But I do think there is still surgery to be done on the UK stock that is for sale, because your stats bear it out. We probably haven't got them here, but in reality, about 50% of the UK stock has been on the market for 90 days or longer. It has to be the wrong price. So there is still work to be done, because those properties either need to be cleared out of the system and taken off, they need to be rented to rent to buy, or they need to be reduced, because otherwise they're just waft in the system. They're not really doing anything for anybody. Because
Iain, only 1 in 7.1 houses are being reduced each month at the moment. In fact, at those numbers, probably a little bit more, 1 in 7.5.
I think that's understandable because of the time of year. If you put yourself in the vendor's shoes, it's a flawed policy, because if prices do continue to fall at the rate of, let's say, 1% a month or whatever it is they're doing at the moment, waiting until the spring, it's not a question of putting it back on the market in the spring at today's price. It's probably going to be putting it back on. There's still a tail to come here. I still think there's a bit of downward pressure on prices, primarily because the stock is overpriced. But so there's a balance, isn't there, between wanting to keep the stock on and at the same time, giving sound, solid advice. But it's really simple for me. If you're an owner of a property and you're not getting interest and your agent is telling you to reduce the price, make one or two decisions, take it off or reduce it. The one thing you don't want to do is sit and do nothing. Don't be idle.
Wise words again. Right, let's go and look at gross sales. I find this quite enlightening. That last week, 19,722 properties gross sales. The week before, 20,300. The week before, 20,300. In terms of, we'll look at what the 2021 and 2021 and 22 figures in a second on the net sales. But in terms of gross sales, I think even in the start of the summer, you would have thought that would have been a lot lower, wouldn't you? And like you say, you would have thought that Christmas would have come a lot earlier with regard to what's happening in the economic climate. But they're not bad, are they?
No, I think they're holding up reasonably well. I don't know where stock levels are at the moment in terms of actually fit. I'm sure you'll have that somewhere, but as a percentage of stock, I think it's a disappointing number, because I think there probably is more stock available, or there was in the last few weeks. It might be starting to recede now, with a few coming off, and I'm certainly seeing these stats. As you know, the land registry stuff can be a few months behind. The general feeling for me across my clients, as a rule, is that Christmas is in the way of a recovery. It's like you can feel all the green shoots of more buyers registering, vendors getting sensible on their price. The must-sell vendors are now starting to show their hand and coming to the fore, and therefore you've got sensible marketing, sensible pricing, sensible fees, people willing to work with sensible timescales and sensible offers. So deals are being done, and it feels to me that that's actually accelerating. Certainly the weekly numbers I get from clients to show their net sales isn't declining at the rate you'd expect it to because of the time of year. It's holding up very well. Which is why, one of the reasons I'm very optimistic about next year in terms of transactional volumes. I still think we've got a bit of work to do price-wise, and of course we might have a year of two halves because it is an election year. And towards the back end of the year, we're going to have an election which will nearly always cause some stuttering in the marketplace.
It always does. It's interestingly, I had a text message from a boss who runs a network of between 50 and 70 branches. And he said that nationally last week, the number of new buyers registering was the highest versus any week between 17 and 22. So
yeah, and I think the number of buyers registering and viewing numbers are very encouraging. We're seeing quite a lot of first-time buyers coming out of being forced out of the rental market due to the sheer cost of renting, and are making the decision to buy because the interest rates have come back. Sorry, the interest rates haven't, but the cost of borrowing has. So there are some really interesting dynamics.
Okay. Interesting when you on that. Now this is too early to call, Ian, and there is a slight effect of the November effect, which does affect the market. But there seems to be in some locations a slight cooling of the rental market in terms of the growth of rents and properties sticking slightly. I'm getting a patchy picture on the numbers, so I can't call it yet. But things are, let's be honest. The last few years, it's all been rocket ship upwards. I'm seeing some places that are levering, even dipping a bit, but I'm not calling it just yet. This is the number.
I would call the top end of the lettings market is definitely reducing. I'd be happy to call that even without the stats. The larger units, probably the accidental landlords with the bigger properties, with the higher rents. That market it's not stalling. There's still a demand, but if you're hanging out for the wrong rent, you'll have a void. It will be empty. Most areas, honestly, it's still list and let. As long as I don't think these big increases, the sort of 10% year on year, massive changes in rent, I don't think that's happening anymore. But most of my clients are working hand to mouth. They list it, they let it. But if it's a bigger property, say a 4-bed detached family home at the very high end of their market's rental values, they are definitely reducing in rent. The rents are definitely reducing.
Interesting, on the screen here, we've got some bonus graphs for you, which again, you can download. If you go to YouTube and go to the description of the video, there's a link at the bottom, which will show you how to download these. And we've got them for the UK, and we've also got them for the regions as well. And I'm more than happy for you to use these on a personal level. I'm also happy for you to use them at valuations. What I do ask is that you don't use them on social media. But you can use them when at valuations, when you're trying to show what you're talking about at the vendors and landlords. Just whilst we're just talking about, this is the number of rental properties per region. And you can see here is that there's been an uptick, but there's always an uptick in every November. Some of that is the student lets. If you can strip that out, there's still an uplift in rental properties generally. But anyway, let's get back. Again, all those graphs are available to download free of charge. I just please do not use them on social media. So year to date, gross sales just 1.02 or 1.01 million. The average price of a property selling 355,000. Last week 353. And like we said, the number of properties coming on selling this week 19,722. We've already done this graph, which shows the gap between listing price and average price. And the difference here is the gap. As I said, this week it's 9%. Last week, 14. The week before, 15. Week before, 17. Week before, 90. So keep an eye on that one. I think that's just a blip. We'll keep it. Let's move on to fall-throughs. And the number of fall-throughs this week was 4,863, which is a fall-through rate of 24.69, which we're getting into better territory here. I mean, let's just remind ourselves, Q4 last year, there we were in the 30s and 40s. So thoughts on fall-throughs, Ian?
I think they're inevitable. They're a sign of putting sales together in the first place. So if you've got no fall-throughs, it's probably because you've got no pipeline. But 24%, as 1 in 4, it saddens me. I think the I think there's a lot the industry can do to in terms of reservation deposits and auction processes and better choice of the conveyancer that you get in bed with, and just better processes putting the deal together. But 1 in 4, is it a disaster? Not really. It just means that when you're looking at your pipeline, take 25% of it off, because it's probably not going to exchange. 24% is just a steady number. It saddens me that we as an industry can't. Well, you can see there, year in, year out, a quarter of the deals go. That saddens me, because I think with reservation deposits, with better buyer qualification, with better conveyancing processes, working with conveyancers that are modernising, better sales progression, I think we can reduce that number as an industry. And there are some businesses now. There's a brilliant business in Sheffield. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention them, but they've got this awesome little product that they work, and I can't remember their exact numbers, but I know that their abortive rate is sub 10%, and it hasn't affected their listing.
I can say the number. You can't. I can say it's Red Bricks, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I mean, Mark there has innovated a fantastic product for his own use, and it works. Sellers love it. For me, it would be, if I was an agent, I'd be looking to do similar. I just can't understand why people aren't jumping on that bandwagon. It's primarily, in fact, most of the bosses tell me that they'd love to, but they can't get their staff to do it. It's like, that's a leadership problem again. And if you're not in the self-employed model and you are an employed model and they're taking a basic salary, you have a right to demand it. That's part of a reasonable management instruction, subject to vendors buying, of course. So I think you will see a massive incline in a reservation process within the second-hand market. I think that will be a big change in the market for 2024, and I think that will help with a lot of things. I hope. I get eternally frustrated, Chris, with. I know that the conveyancers are often blamed for things that aren't their fault. I know that they're often. But every time you put a collaboration or a process to them or something that will speed it up, they just protect what they're currently doing. They will not change, and they pretend to. They talk the talk, but they won't change their software. They won't work in a different way. They won't tick boxes on apps. They're really letting the estate agency and the estate agency industry and the clients as a whole. And what they don't understand is, while they're protecting no change, they are causing a reduction in transaction volumes, which affects them in the long run. It's a bizarre system. Agents have got a lot to answer for as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a one-way, as have mortgage brokers. But the biggest logjam is the conveyancing piece, and the conveyancers as a whole, and I know there are some probably watching this chucking bricks at the screen saying this isn't me. And I've had some, when I've been public about it before, and I've been to meet them and said, right, tell me what you're doing that's innovative. You're telling me it's not you. They can't show me anything innovative. They can't show me anything that's truly changing, and every piece of innovation that they put in, they choose to either not do it or say that the Law Society, or some regulatory body won't let them do it. Yet I know from speaking to those regulatory bodies, that's bullshit. They use that as a sort of veto, an opt-out card. I'm not sure we were supposed to be ranting about conveyancers, but we have done.
Right then, let's move on. So net sales. So basically, for those that don't know what net sales are, we take the number of gross sales this week, and then we take off the number of fall throughs that have come off our pipeline. So you might have sold 4 houses that week. You might have 30 houses in your pipeline, but one of those 30, which has probably been there for weeks and weeks and weeks, fell through. So 4 in, 1 out. 1 out, 4 is a fall through, which means you've got net sales of 3. And you can see here that for the last week, for the first time, the net sales was actually greater than the average of 17 to 19, because the white line is 17 to 19. The blue dots is 22. So again, I think, at this moment in time, our net sales are higher than 22, which you would expect, because 22, we had the quasi-quarto, but they are matching, and some weeks better than the 17 to 19 figure. Again, we'd have taken that at the start of the year, especially when you can see here in the summer that we were around 10% off. So
I also think that that's a trend that's going to continue. I expect us to be outperforming the non-COVID years for a good few months next year, particularly depending on what happens with interest rates. I think by middle of next year, we'll have a clear picture of, are we actually going to see some decline in interest rates, which would obviously be a massive boost. We are going to see in the lead up to an election, we're going to see some giveaways, because we always do. We're going to see some feel good factor things that will bring people to the market. And then, of course, we'll have the election itself, which will cause a stutter. But I genuinely expect that pink line to continue to outperform the non-COVID boom years for the early part of next year. The second half, I think all bets are off. Let's see where we are in the future. I think it would be churlish to try and predict, because I don't know what the giveaways are going to be. But you can see interest rates going down. You can see certain things happening with stamp duty, and those things will obviously create an inertia pushing the pink line up.
Excellent. Right. This is year-to-date net sales. And again, for the first time in many months, the year-to-date price, the figure in terms of a percentage of the 17, 18 or 19 figure has gone back in and starts with a 9. We've been hovering for the last 6 weeks, starting in the 89s and 88s. So that just shows that what we showed in the previous graph, that because the pink line has broken through the white line, then we're going in a positive direction, which matches exactly what Iain says. And again, I think insightful, Iain, if you don't mind me saying, Christmas is in the way, isn't it? I just wish it wasn't there, because then we could just carry on as we are.
Look, I mean, I love Christmas. We all love Christmas. It gives us a chance to recharge everything else. But from a business perspective, it does feel that it is actually stifling some momentum. It becomes a good excuse for people to sit on the fence. It becomes a good excuse for salespeople to give their boss excuses as to why they're not delivering. It becomes a good excuse for the boss to accept. So yes, it is a little bit in the way, but ultimately, as long as we charge the batteries hard, and we really do, plug into the system, we should hit January, February, March with a bit of a bang. January probably wouldn't. I mean, we always hope January will be a bang. It's not. It's really February and March that you get the bang, but I think that bang could be very, very big. I would say to any agent looking at the numbers over the last 2 or 3 months, just to bear in mind that you might have cash flow issues that you need to protect in January, February, March, because what we're selling in January, February, March won't be your cash flow. It's what we were doing. And if you look at the net sales versus fall throughs versus fee levels, there is going to be an issue with cash flow for some agents in that sort of first few months of next year. So be aware, if you are banking well in November and December, don't spend it. Put some of it away for a rainy day to fight your cash flow issues that I think are inevitable.
Fingers crossed. I mean, if they got through early 23, because look, the blue line there is net sales in Q4 22. If they got through that, then they should be able to get through that, as long as they haven't been buying Porsches and Lamborghinis. Let's just look at some extra stats which could be of interest to some people. Net sales, which is price changes as a percentage of listings. So the long-term average is just under 43%, and you can see here that price changes 62%, and gross sales as a percentage of listings. These are bonus graphs which only change when we go into December, when I get the new stats in. But again, some people might have not seen these. This is the number of properties that are unit-wise in estate agents' pipelines. The blue line is September, just simply for the benefit to compare and contrast. And when we've got the November ones in, you'll get to see these. But again, that might be useful to you. Again, these are all available to download from the link on YouTube. Available rental properties, both that's UK and then excluding London and Southeast, because it takes up, again, I always love this. This is that just shows you, encapsulate what happened to London. Everyone left London in COVID. We've already looked at the number of properties for sale, and then by region basis. Let's move on to the regional stats, Iain, and then we can go and look at Mansfield. We don't spend too long on these, but basically you can download these for your own benefit and have a look at them. So that's East Midlands, East of England, Inner London. And again, red is bad, green is good. Again, we haven't got the time to plow through these, but certainly you can compare and contrast these. You won't be able to see them particularly well on YouTube, but you can download them. And we just you can just have a look to your heart's content and just compare yourself against the other towns, against your region. I'll just whiz through these, Ian, very quickly, and we'll go to just graph.
Do you get a lot of agents downloading these, Chris? I mean, can you tell whether they've been downloaded? It just amazes me that this sort of data is available to agents free of charge, and I guess a lot of them are complaining about transaction volumes and blah blah blah, and maybe even supplier costs and increases of Rightmove and everything else. But they don't go and do they actually go and take advantage of this kit? I mean, because if I was an agent, I'd be looking at it at least.
We get on average between 900 and 1100 views per show, and number of downloads probably about 25.
Right, which is, I mean, guys, just listen to yourself. You've got 1,000 people. Just go and have a look. Have a look at. If you decide not to use it, I get it. No, you know, it's not for me or anyone else to dictate. But have a look at the resource and see what it empowers your listeners to have at their fingertips to prove expertise. If you don't like it, then don't use it. But if you do, but at least go and have a look. 25 estate agents in the UK have looked at free data that shows what's happening in their region. Wow.
There you go, eh? Right, Ian, what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on a town or city. And this week, we're going to go to the town of Mansfield in Nottinghamshire. The software that we're going to use is 20EA Insights. 20EA has a number of platforms, but it's the Insight platform we're going to use. The Insights platform is available for you to use. You can have this on your own town. It is available free of charge for certain postcodes over a certain time period, or if you pay them a modest amount of money, then you can get the platform that on your town. I don't know how much it costs because I'm not being paid to do this, but I'm just flagging it up. It is, I would say, Rightmove Plus on steroids with rockets and lasers and glitter balls. And it basically proves how good you are as an estate agent. So please don't mention my name if you're interested in it. I don't get any kickbacks. I just love it to bits. So ladies and gentlemen, let's us go and have a look at Mansfield. Okay, Ian, as always, I'll dive in and then you just jump in at any time. So this is the Insights platform. So let us go and have a look at Mansfield. For the purposes of this, we're calling Mansfield, let's just have a quick look, NG 18, 19, 20, and 21, which is the two core postcodes of the town itself, and also the villages that are around it, okay? So these are going back to 2018, and let us have a look. So the average price of a property that's come on the market in the last 6 years, 18, 19, 21, 7 years, 189,000. Let's look at new instructions, and you can quite clearly see here that there is one that is just head and shoulders above everyone else, and that's Buckley Brown. You've got to admit, mate, that is quite impressive market share growth, isn't it?
I can't see whether I'm looking at it. I'm trying to see whether they grow. Oh, yes. So sorry. Right. Okay. Yeah. So they've been. Are they a fairly new agent then in the last 3 or 4 years, Chris, or have they been around longer? I don't know the brand. So sorry to Buckley and Brown. You're doing a fantastic job by the look of it, but I don't know who you are.
I mean, they're certainly not a corporate. I believe that I think I saw them at the Esters winning something there. But you've got to admit, I mean, I look at the Insights platform day in, day out. That is a particularly impressive growth. I've not seen a growth like that for an awful long time. Especially when you consider, let's just have a look at Bairstow Eaves. Okay, and then Purple Bricks. So it's expected that's following the national picture. Let's look at John Sankey. So they've been hovering around the 5% mark.
So I wonder what Buckley Brown are doing differently to everybody else. Obviously, the people will be of a higher caliber. Sorry for the rest of you if you're listening to this, but you could only deduce that that their people have to be more on it. I'm imagining their marketing is sharper and more intelligent.
I don't know. I mean, they could be offering cheaper fees. I don't know. I mean, again, we're just looking at the stats, and this is the benefit of. So let's look at what Leaders. So Leaders obviously bought an independent, and that's again just hovering around. Birchall Edwards, Newton Fallowell, Frank Innes, part of the Countrywide gang. That's quite strange for Newton Fallowell. They're normally one of the top performers. Strike, Okay. And I do know that they've focused particularly on the Nottinghamshire area. You can quite clearly see here that that's been doing. David Blount. Okay. And we've got Laura Elizabeth's. I've got, oh, they're doing okay. Okay. So new instructions again. So let's just have a look. Let's just see who the upper quartile agent is. So 189. So let's go and see who the upper quartile agent is. Let's go and have a look, see who sells the posh houses. Doesn't seem to be many posh houses in Mansfield.
Never been.
It's a sweet market town north of Nottingham. Yeah, nice part of the world. We've got a lot of ex-mining town villages right there. So again, it appears that Buckley Brown, so we've gone for 400 above, which looks like the upper quartile. So again, Buckley Brown, Richard Watkinson is a Nottinghamshire based agency. And they do tend to, they've got a number of branches around. They do tend to deal with the more country properties. But again, then so it appears that 2 agents are running that. Again, I've only ever seen that once before, where the number 1 agent for the town is also the upper quartile number 1 agent as well. Let's just see if we start pushing it up to 600,000. Again, Buckley Brown, I'd love to know what they're doing. Then Finer Country kick in. That's it. But again, we're dealing on such low numbers since 2018. We've got to take all that slightly with a pinch of salt. Okay, let's move on and look at how many houses they actually sell. Oh no, I tell you what, I will just show just for the benefit of, let's look at what the stock on the market is. So let us go and have a look at, here we go. So this is of interest. In November 18, there were 1,106 properties for sale in the Mansfield area. That dropped to 560 by November 21, and we're now up to 1,184. So there is double the number of properties. So again, if there's any takeaway from any Mansfield agents and you're on the doorstep, you can say, Mrs. Miggins, there are double the number of properties for sale, but then the number of properties selling, again, I'll just go back. Let's go back and let's just get rid of the, hold on. And again, this is why I do like this particular bit of kit, even though I'm not being paid to do it. Here we go. So therefore, again, there you go. The number of properties sold in November 21, 243, and this time 168. So again, if there's a massive takeaway from here, ladies and gentlemen, is this. The number of properties on the market has doubled. The number of sales has dropped by 35%.
So in effect, the effectiveness of the agents or the market, whichever way you want to determine that, has decreased. Where it says property count, next to Buckley and Brown, it says property count 2796. What is that property count?
So that is the number of sole subject to contract properties, because we've got the trigger there, between the 1st of January 2018 and now.
So it's a huge market. There are he's saying at some point during those dates that 2,796 properties went under offer, of which 20%, which is 400.
13,000 went under offer, of which 2,796 were Buckley Brown.
Okay, it's over a 5-year period. That's the bit that's thrown me. Right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, again, I'm really impressed with this growth. I'd love to know what Buckley Brown do. And again, here's the question to Bairstow Eves, Purple Bricks, John Sankey. Well, not Purple Bricks, but Richard Watkinson's and Newton Valor. What are you doing? I think what you should be doing, Chris, is inviting whichever town you focus on. If there is a runaway leader like this, invite them onto your next show and see if they want to become your guest after you. So, next week, see if you can get Buckley Brown's CEO, MD, owner, director on to not give away any trade secrets, but clearly talk to us about how they're bucking the trend. Bucking the trend. I like that. That should be their thing. Buckley Brown, bucking the trend. There you go. Do that. Right then, let's move on, and now let's talk about my favourite graph. Now, this is a bit of a geek fest, ladies and gentlemen. We've already looked at new instructions and sole subject to contract, so we need to ignore those columns. we're going to briefly ignore follow throughs and price changes. What we are going to focus on is these 4 columns here, because these are really, really important. Okay. And for anyone that hasn't watched the show, everyone who has watched the show, apologies for the next 30 seconds. You know what I'm about to say. But for anyone that hasn't watched the show, if you think about it, a property that leaves an estate agent's books is only leaving for 2 reasons. She either exchanges or she withdraws. And it's the percentage difference of what those, the more you exchange on, the more you're going to get paid on. And again, as Brian Mansell has said in the past, we're not here to market houses, we're here to get them sold and moved. The bottom line is this. In Mansfield, in the last 12 months, for every 100 houses that have come left an estate agent's books, 68.97% of them have exchanged and 31.03 have withdrawn. So if you're above that, you're better than the average. And if you're below it, you're obviously worse. And we can quite clearly see here that Buckley Brown exchange on 75.7% of the properties that they list, whilst Bairstow Eaves at 78 and Purple Bricks at 80. Laura Elizabeth at 84, but Strike at 66, Birchall Edwards at 61, and Newton Fallowell at 63, and Frank Innes at 62. So therefore, if you're in the punter's house and you're saying, Mrs. Miggins, you're more likely to sell, and I was Buckley Brown or I was Bairstow Eaves, I could say, Mrs. Miggins, you've got a 3 in 4 chance of moving, whilst with the other agents, you've only got a 6 in 10 chance of moving. And that's pretty powerful stats, aren't they, Ian?
Yeah, and there are third-party evidence to that rather than your own stats. There's various ways of being able to show your penetration, but again, it's volume versus time versus success versus price that you get, and this graph gives you virtually all of those metrics apart from time on market, in fact. But so you should be able to prove by whatever metric you're looking to choose your estate agent. Let's see where we sit in your by your own decisions. Do you want the best chance of selling it? Do you want the best chance of getting the asking? What is it? And you'll be able to show the client using these types of data, which is where data comes in. I mean, data isn't to replace humans, neither is AI. It's to empower the best ones,
indeed,
to deliver the best outcomes.
I just want to state for the record that I said the last year. This is actually the last 2 years, because 20 I was away last week, and 20 EA looks like they've changed the graph. So let's just move that to this year, and we'll just see how that changes. And you can there you go. That's interesting, isn't it? There we go. So this is new, Ian. Even I didn't know this was here. So therefore, look, here we go. Between November 21 and November 22, 76% of properties that left agents' books in Mansfield exchanged. And now 60%. And you can
when you say it left agents' books, it exchanged with that agent.
Yes. So it left the agent's books. So she either exchanges or she withdraws. But it's left the agent's books. That's quite marked. It's interesting to see that.
It also wouldn't have been expected. I would have expected the number to go down if you shorten the period as the market's tightened. But actually, I think the average has gone down. But some of the guys.
Okay. Right, so the average for the whole 2 years is 68 or 69. But if we push it and look at each year on a unique basis, nearest damn it. So there we go, 76 for November 21 to November 22. And this is exciting because you know me, I like my stats. And dropped to 61%.
Yeah, that I would have expected. I would have expected that drop off.
But what is interesting is the movement between the two. So it quite clearly shows is that Laura Elizabeths have retained their, of doing really well on this these stats. Buckley Brown have just dropped slightly compared. They've all dropped, but it's the percentage of the drop. This also shows here the percentage market share for sales. This is for new instructions and what it was compared to the year before. So you can see how your market share is growing as well. Again, a bit of a geek fest. And it just shows you stats that prove you know what you're talking about. Anything else on this before you want to move on? I mean, interestingly, there's some big price changes here, isn't there? 1 in 2 houses that Buckley Brown are putting on the market are reducing 49%.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously managing their stock well. You could argue, are they getting the prices right in the first place? But ultimately, they are doing what's needed to get their clients moved
Well,
reasonably successfully and over reasonable volume.
they must be doing well because they've got some good sales figures. So good stuff. Right, let's move on. Let's see. So this particular graph, this is again a bit complicated, but we'll go through it. The first thing is this: is that they look at all the properties that you've put on the market, and they do what's called an automated valuation model, or a ValPal. Well, that's just a trade name, but there's lots of automated valuation models out there. And what they then do is they then say, right, okay, this is 20 EA. They judge your AVM price versus what you put it on the market for, and then take the average difference. So in essence, Buckley Brown put on average their asking price 1.76% above what in 20 EA think it's worth. Bairstow is at 1.92, and then Laura Elizabeth at 2.93. So there's some big numbers here. Then what do you actually achieve from the original asking price? So therefore, whilst Buckley Brown put it on the market at 1.76, they get 1.52% less than the original asking price. Now, instead of messing about taking one from the other, what they then do is they apply this to just a straight 200. If someone put on a 250 grand house in Mansfield, what would it sell for? And Buckley Brown would sell an average £250,000 house for 250,500, whilst Bairstow is £250,078, whilst John Sankey 243, but Laura Elizabeth's at 3,100. So again, if I was Laura Elizabeth's, I would be saying to people, well, I'll get you more money because they are the stats that prove it. Okay. So again, if Laura Elizabeth is not getting a high fee, Laura, you need to, or look, team Laura Elizabeth, you need to be saying, look, we'll get you £3,000 more. So that's why we're worth an extra 500 quid on our fees. And again, the others there. Anything you want to say on this one before we move on, Iain?
No, I mean, I think stats are great. There's quite a lot of stuff in there. I think if you did present that to an owner, you might complicate the situation. But there are stories there. But sometimes you've got to be careful not to go so statty on the valuation appointment, or as a business owner in terms of your strategy. It's like, if I was Buckley Brown, frankly, I wouldn't even be bothered with this stuff. My view would be that everything else is adding up to where I need it to be, and as long as I'm charging the right amount, because anything we don't know is what do they charge. As long as their fees add up to a sensible profit. Be careful not to geek out on stats and spend all your time trying to analyse it and none of your time trying to implement and do things.
I think the magic thing is, I think you're right, Buckley Brown, they don't need this, but all the others could probably use this. And again, it's like most things, it's the way you present the stats that are important. And it's the way you package them and tell a story around it. And the magic thing is and again, I'm going to get a bit of a geek fest here, is to get a human to make a decision, 19 out of 20 decisions that a human makes, the emotional side has to say yes first before the logical backs it up. So the worst thing you could do is go in and flash the stats, pardon the pun. The best way to do it is to tell a story first, which is an emotional part. This is sales psychology. Tell the story of Mrs. Miggins on how she missed out and didn't get the best price. And then, because that's emotional buy-in, and then you can briefly hit them with your iPad and show them the stats and say, look, Mrs. Miggins, I get £3,000 more. And here's the stats. You don't have to go into as much detail as what we do on this, but it does work. But hit them that way, and you should be okay. Right, let's get back to, we're nearly finished, ladies and gentlemen. How quickly do agents sell their houses? So again, we've got new instruction to sold subject to contract to completion, and then you add them all together. So let's just see who the quick agents are. And so we've just got here. So there we go. Buckley Brown, they're selling it in 60 days. Birchall Edwards, 77 days. Then you add the pink line there is the sale, is the length of time it's sale agreed whilst it's in the sales pipeline. And you can see here that the quickest agent is Laura Elizabeth, and the slowest agent in the top 10 is Birchall Edwards. finally, let's go and have a look at the rental market. And these are looking at the number of new instructions since 2018. Let's have a look and just see where the markets is. And again, there's not going to be a huge difference here in market growth, because when a landlord puts a property on the market with an agent, tends to stay there. It just gives us a flavour of which agents. Interestingly, open rent are only at number 3. Normally they're number 1. So Frank Innes, they seem to be dropping. Martin and Co. Buckley Brown, they've got a small lettings book. Oh, but look, they're growing, aren't they? That's nice to see. Well done. Location, Birchall Edwards, they seem to be dropping. Simpsons, Zebra Letts, Scott Belvoir. Okay, Ask. Okay, David Blout. Pimer Properties. We'll just have a quick look. There we go. There's not much happening there, but just to be a flavour of what's of interest. Anything on this before we wrap the show up, Iain?
No, I mean, obviously, other than the fact that I would repeat that I think that we can see, smell, and feel that there is some positivity around, what's happening with interest rates. There's positivity what's happening with the cost of living and the inflation. There's positivity around there's good levels of stock available at affordable and sensible prices. And if you drive that hard into the new year with the right mindset, the right people, you could have a really good couple of months under your belt. The only thing you've got to do is, while you're doing that, keep one hand on cash flow, or just be aware to anything you've got on your balance sheet now. Don't go drawing it off as an end of year dividend for the minute. Just if you can afford it, just hold on to see you through, because I think then you'll be in a very positive position come middle of the year.
Iain, thank you very much for your insight just now, and also the insights that you've given us throughout the show. You certainly are extremely good value for money and give great insight. If anyone wants to check Iain out, it's Iain with 2 I's, Iain White, and he's exceptional at what he does. But more importantly, thank you for watching the show. We started this in early January, and we've got a couple more to go. We won't be going all the way through to Christmas. We'll probably go until probably middle of December, and then we'll call it a day, and then start again probably middle of January, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you very much for your kind insights and your comments, both good and bad. Iain, again, thank you for your fascinating insight, and we'll see you next week for week 48 of the UK Property Market Stat Show.